Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Everyday Heroes podcast. Today on the episode, I have Sal Chadwick, founder of our Totally Super Awesome Brain. Now, Sal isn't like any other woman I've seen. She's on a mission to help unlock the potential within neurodiverse minds. And after 15 years in the financial services, Sal made a huge pivot into advocacy, education, and community support. Sal also serves on the board of Social Inclusion Action Group and works with the local government, child and family services. Sal, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. Okay, so what I want you to do first and foremost is let's go back to the very beginning so that viewers can understand your journey and what's come to play. So can you just take us all the way back?
Yeah, look, I started this journey in 2023. I had this moment. My son and I were at a waterfall, and that just completely changed the direction of my life and my work. I remember standing there and I was surrounded by nature, water, sunlight, stillness. And before we went to that waterfall, I was feeling quite overwhelmed just as a parent. And also just seeing other parents feeling so overwhelmed when I worked with them in the water. And when I was there at the waterfall, I felt this overwhelming sense that there had to be another way to support these children and these families. And seeing my son feeling so relaxed and calm at this waterfall, I just felt this overwhelming need to get down on one knee and make this promise that I was going to help children unlock their brains and help families feel less alone in this process. And at the time, I'd already spent years working with neurodivergent children in the water through swimming, aqua-based movement programs, and I was seeing incredible changes in their confidence and regulation and coordination and connection, but I still felt like there was some missing pieces in the conversations that families were having around child development and nervous system health. But then something really amazing happened after when I was going back to my car. I opened Spotify and this out of nowhere, this random audiobook started playing. It was by Patricia Lima, and she was talking about this thing called total load theory. And it was the idea that children can become overloaded by multiple stresses at once. That include diet, inflammation, retained reflexes, sensory overload, breathing dysfunction, technology environment, environmental stresses, and nervous system dysregulation. And it was in that moment that I thought, oh, well, this is the wrong, I didn't put this on. But as I was listening to her, it made me realize that I felt like there's every little puzzle piece suddenly connected, and that moment became the foundation of our Totally Super Awesome Brain and the work I now do to support families um, through the education with them, movement, water-based support in the water, and then practical holistic strategies. And so that's where we started.
I love that so much. I love it because I'm totally the woo woo, right? I'm all about the woo woo, and that the stuff like that where the podcast just plays, right? I'm just like, yep, those are your angels coming through, right? Showing you that this is the information that you need, and I absolutely love it. And I will definitely link the book that you mentioned in the show notes so that people can have a read as well. But it's stuff like that when we make that promise, we make that declaration to ourselves that something has to change. Tony Robbins talks about this all the time around like making that decision and then like that's it, we're not going to be doing this anymore, we're going to be completely changed, and this is how we're going to move forward. And I love that for you, and I love that for your son, really. What do you think are the missing pieces when it comes to traditional therapy? Like we're often, with NDIS, we've pushed into speech and OT, and yes, they absolutely have a place, 100 million%. But are there missing pieces that come along with, being able to, like we said, unlock our child's minds and give them that true potential? What are those missing pieces?
Yeah, look, I think many families are searching for a more connected whole child approach. Often, when I speak to parents, they have already tried they, often this is a very common comment that they make. I've tried everything. And, as we know, they probably haven't tried every single little thing, but they've definitely tried all of the traditional therapies that are out there. And yet they're still feeling so overwhelmed and feeling like their children haven't really progressed anywhere. So um, often parents are given these strategies to manage behaviors or learning difficulties, but not necessarily enough support in understanding what might be contributing to the nervous system overload that's underneath. One of the biggest things I share through our Totally Super Awesome Brain is that total load theory, which is the understanding that stress accumulates from many different areas of a child's life and body. So, when the load becomes too high, it can impact the learning, the emotional regulation, coordination, not being able to participate in sport, having sleep regression or not enough sleep, sensory processing, hyperactivity, and overall well-being. So instead of searching for one magic solution, I do encourage families to think in terms of stepping stones. And we teach this at a Totally Super Awesome Brain. We start with step one and we move through those steps all the way up to step 8 or 9, um, which is, step one would be diet changes, looking at diet and looking at reducing those inflammatory foods and supporting their brain health as a foundation. Then moving on to step 2, which is movement and sunlight. Step 3, going through a 3-week tech fast, which is probably one of the most trickiest ones in a modern world. But I've actually found that one was probably the one that once they get through that 3-week fast, they do see a huge improvement. Step 4, looking for the root causes of your through functional medicine by seeing a functional doctor. Um, Step 5, developmental vision, looking at vision as a whole. A lot of kids with speech or language delays, we actually find that once vision has been improved or turned on, the speech naturally flows. Airway and breathing support, assessing that mouth breathing. We find that sleep is improved when they've gotten to that step. And then primitive reflex integration and brain balance programs through, programs like Brain Fit Kids. And, Simona sound therapy is another one at step 8. We suggest people don't start that one until they've done all the other foundational work. And then step 9, when they get through all the steps, a lot of parents are like, what do I do now? I've done it all. I'm feeling good, but I'm still feeling this overwhelm. So step 9 is where we we ask parents to support other parents, and that's because parents are often carrying this enormous stress, and that you started at step 1 and you know where you've come from. You're at step 9 now. Let's bring those parents that are at step 1 with us and try and support them. And I do talk about openly about nervous system healing for the parent as a whole, um, through there's therapies out there like EMDR. Self-care is an important one, just finding that 10-15 minutes a day for yourself and no one else. And then community support for parents as well, which is why I decided to go and join the Social Inclusion Action Group, where we actually provide funding to families, to community groups, to support families, and bring them back into the community, especially at a time where families often, in these situations, do feel lonely, even though they are going to appointments or, going to school and visiting family and friends. They often do feel alone. So there are practical supports there that can help reduce that overall load for the parent as well.
I love those steps. So if can we just go back in time and like you can just
Yeah.
tell me those steps at the very beginning? Like no, I can just wrap you up and just take you back to when my son was 2 years old. That because it's hard, right? It's parents don't know what those steps are. Parents don't know because, like I was saying before, we're only told speech and OT, but there is so much more to going on. And to your point around, I call it behavioral optometry, like, obviously just looking at the eyes. We're often, I can't tell you, Sal, how many times I was asked for my child to have his hearing tested repeatedly. Hearing tested, hearing tested, hearing tested. No one ever said to me that we needed to get his eyes tested ever, right? No one ever mentioned eyesight. And I was like, I didn't even think to get his eyes tested. And it wasn't until we saw a functional medicine doctor where she said, I really want you to go see someone for his eyes. Lo and behold, he's actually long-sighted in both eyes. And since we've had his glasses, his handwriting has gotten so much better. His concentration has gotten so much better. And I just think, why aren't we screaming this from the rooftops? Like, why aren't we sharing this? It makes me so sad and angry and frustrated that parents have to dig and scrape all over the internet to try and find exactly like the blueprint that you've just given around what that looks like and how do we then manage that. And so I have told so many people since he's gotten his glasses, whether your child is typical or not, I don't care where they are, if they are completely thriving or whatever is going on, go to not a normal optometrist, but a behavioral optometrist so that they can see what's going on. So if your child walks away with 20/20 vision, great, we don't have to worry. But your child is not going to know if their vision is off because they're going to think it's normal, right? They're not going to think that there's something wrong with it. So because they're going to think, oh, well, that's how everyone sees. Well, actually, buddy, it's not how everyone sees, and we need to make sure that we correct that. And I think the mouth breathing, the breathing in general is so important and really important for kids with ADHD as well as autism. I think I was reading a study that was saying that, kids who are diagnosed with ADHD maybe even have sleep apnea and not ADHD. And so then don't quote me on this, don't come for me if this is incorrect, but this is what a study that I was reading. And, they were just saying that they were incorrectly diagnosed. And you think about it, when you're a new mum, right, and you are so sleep deprived and you're exhausted, you can't, if you sit still, you probably will fall asleep. So that's why they're moving around so much. That's why there's lack of concentration. We've got studies to show that women we've got newborns, have the recall when they're driving of a 0.05 person who's been drinking because the reflexes just aren't there because they're so exhausted. And so we're so quick to diagnose our children with ADHD. Is there a place? 100%. I'm absolutely not saying that a diagnosis is not needed, but let's look into these things so that we can make sure that we're putting the right step forward for our children. So go ahead.
And absolutely. And I also think, what some parents have said to me, oh, am I going to get my diagnosis removed by doing all these steps? And quite often I try and explain to them that maybe they might still have a diagnosis, but their functional capacity is severely improved by taking all these steps and making their life so much better. When I spoke to a parent at the very beginning of this whole journey, and she said, my son's just been diagnosed, and they told me to prepare my life to be looking after him the rest of my life, and that his function may not improve, and that I'm going to have to support him the rest of my life. And I could see that feeling in her face, that sort of the feeling that, okay, he's never going to function well. So my or load is always really heavy, and this is where the steps come in. And I sort of say to them, well, we might be able to improve that function just by following these steps. And I didn't talk about auditory processing, but that's another one similar to vision. A lot of people say, oh, my child had the baby hearing test when they were a baby and it all came out good. Well, auditory processing speed is completely different to a hearing test. And just a family the other day said to me, I went to try and find someone that would do auditory processing speed checks. There's only one in the entire state of Victoria that checks for auditory processing speed. Which, if you're trying to talk to a child and give them information, if it's taking them 60 seconds to process that, then clearly it's, there's going to be some form of, dysfunction there, and we're going to think that there is probably more underlying there than um, we actually believe. So it's about looking for those root causes, and I think I haven't found a parent yet that has come back to me and said, Sal, I've done all of these and it hasn't worked. I can happily say, touch wood, that every parent I've spoken to, when they've done even one out of the 8 steps, has actually said that their child's functions are improved in some way or another, which is great. So I guess it's just about getting the word out there, and um, being an advocate for change in our medical system as well. When you go and see a doctor there, and you tell them that there's a problem or a challenge, their response is, here's this medication, or here's this therapist that's going to be able to talk you through it. There's no, okay, what's happening on the underlying conditions? What, why haven't they slept well? Are they breathing well? Why can't they, if you're talking to them and they're spacing out, why could that be? Is it that they're having seizures, or is it that, it's just taking them a really long time for their brain to process that information? And the great thing about the books that I've read is that the brain is plastic, and the brain's plastic even up to elderly stages. I work with elderly people in the water, and we do a lot of reflex exercises during my Aqua Aerobics classes. And even they have said that by doing brain training, they've had, improvement in their own overall function as well. So the great thing is that we can do things to help change our brain and improve brain function. It's just a matter of what those things are and doing a little bit more research.
Absolutely spot on. I love that so much. So, talking about the water, can you just share with the listeners, in terms of like reflex integration and a child's development, what does that actually look like in a water environment?
Oh, look, water is one of the most incredible environments for supporting neurodevelopment, because it naturally provides that, or combines that movement, the sensory input. For a lot of children, it helps with emotional regulation, coordination. We teach breath work, so it helps with that breath work and connection all in one package. So in the pool, I use activities that support balance, body awareness, crossing the midline. We do a lot of games and activities with bilateral coordination, a lot of rhythm songs sometimes if they like songs. And yeah, we talk about breath control, and then the reflex integration stuff I do with babies and toddlers, but also older children. If I see some of those reflexes still retained, I might do an activity there with them to try and help that. Their ability to swim, and in a way that also feels fun and safe for them as well, because we do know that statistics have found that neurodivergent children in particular are 180% more likely to drown in the water, which is quite alarming. And it's mostly because they don't feel comfortable and safe in the water. So it's our job to help increase that. And I do find that the resistance and the pressure of in the water does provide that calming sensory input for the nervous system. So while the buoyancy allows them to move freely and confidently if they're in shallow water, many children who struggle with coordination or confidence on land, because they don't have that grab against them, they do feel more successful in the water, and that confidence often flood areas of life. Um, Breathing with breath regulation, water naturally supports that. It's incredibly important because breathing patterns and nervous system regulation are closely connected. And what I love most is that children often don't realize they're doing the developmental work. So when I do work with them, they just think it's another swimming class. So and parents do too, because I work with babies as well. Parents are like, "Oh, this is amazing! I can't believe how much my child's improved, just not just in the water, but at home too." And they just feel really connected, successful, calm, and joyful. And when the parent and the child feel safe and regulated in the water with me, the brain is far more available for learning and development later on too.
I absolutely agree with that. And there is something special about the water, right? There's something very, very calming about it. And we see it with kids a lot. And that statistic around the drowning it sends chills down my spine. So, getting them to understand how to swim, whatever that looks like, or if they're not able to swim, making sure that you've always got eyes on them is so, so important. With regards to communities, how can we better support our neurodivergent families? Like, what does that look like for you?
I think communities can better support neurodiverse families by shifting from that judgment to an understanding. I think many families are carrying this invisible stress and navigating those enormous challenges behind closed doors. And quite often, those discussions aren't had with maybe a parent who thinks that another parent has a neurotypical child and is feeling like they might be judged. I think we need more education around nervous system regulation and the idea that children thrive when we reduce overload and support the foundations of health and development. So those things like movement, sleep, breathing, sensory environments, emotional safety, connection, nutrition, and community support matter much more than many people realize. So if the community can come together and help support families with that, it's going to make the parent feel like this journey is so much easier. I would also love to see more inclusive and sensory aware environments where children and families are feeling welcomed rather than judged. Quite often, I speak to families where they've joined for example, if the child's a bit younger, they've joined um, a parent group, like a play group, and their child isn't a child that's joining in on the music part of it because it's too much sensory overload for them, and so the parents finding that they're having to separate themselves from the group just to try and chase their little child around. And often those parents say that they've left those groups because no one actually came up to them and said, "Hey, I can see that you're doing this. Let me get my child and we'll just come and join whatever your child's doing." And so I'd really love to see a bit more inclusiveness around that. Um, Through our Totally Super Awesome Brain, I try and create a space where families do feel hopeful and informed and supported instead of feeling that overwhelm. And some families, sometimes do call me and say, "Sal, I'm sorry," before they've even told me about what's happened. And I'm like, "Don't say sorry. It's okay. I get it. I'm here." And so sometimes just having that feeling that it's okay for them to have a vent or have a cry and talk about, what's going wrong, even if I can't fix it. Um, just feeling like they have that support there is something that sometimes the most powerful thing you can offer as a parent. And just simply understanding and reassurance that, they really aren't alone. And that's, I think, if everyone in the community could do that and, ask those people to join them in their activities instead of saying you need to start a completely different group for your types, would be amazing. If we could just all come together and just be really accepting. That's what I hope that we can achieve one day.
One day, Sal. One day we'll get there. We will get there. It definitely takes time, and for a lot of parents, when they see neurodivergence, like whether there's stimming or whether there's something else going on, because it looks different, it's often combined with fear. And so with fear, we're like, put the brakes on, we're going to run away. We don't like this because we don't understand it. And if we just had a bit more, like most parents, and you can't even blame them because they have no education around neurodivergence or what that even looks like. So then we need to be able to, have them understand what that looks like and how we can better support, exactly like what you were saying, better support a child who might be feeling an overwhelm, rather than who's that kid in the corner playing by themselves when we're all the way over here. We're just going to be doing this so they can do whatever they want. And it's hard. I have been in those play groups, right? Being the one chasing after my angel boy and thinking, I just want the whole entire ground to just open up and swallow us, and we can just disappear, and no one has to, because it felt very judgy. And I remember it was a music class, and he was so overstimulated, and I literally went home and cried. Like, I cried my eyes out because I was like, and obviously this was before the diagnosis. So I was like, what is going on? Why can't he sit still? What is happening? Is it me? Am I doing something wrong? I didn't understand. And it was so painful to not recognize or not connect the dots as to what was going on. Now when he stims, I'm like, you live your best life, mate. You go and stim, and you just, yes, go. I'm going to join you. Let's go. Right. And I just think it's, rather than being like, oh, he's he's the naughty boy, or he's like whatever. It's just expressing himself, right? Whether we're singing, humming, whatever. It is what it is. You can't, like, wouldn't come up to you, Sal, and be like, you're not having a coffee today, Sal, because you've been a naughty girl. Like, if coffee is your regulation, if it's something that makes you feel so good in the morning, who am I to take that away from you, right? So each to their own. But going back for a second, you were originally in financial services. You were in there for 15 years, I think, and you obviously were dealing with a lot of different people and dealing in a lot of different situations. And do you think that really prepared you for what was to come, and how you've set up this organization and how you help other parents going through this?
Yeah, look, very grateful to be working in financial services. I think that background actually really prepared me really well for advocacy work. It really taught me how to research deeply. That's how I found the 9 steps. It wasn't just, the audiobook was the start of what was to come, and I feel like those research skills really taught me how to research deeply, to analyze the information, to sort of filter out the things that are kind of a little bit unusual, that might not really be aligned, and really to communicate clearly, and navigate those complex systems, and to stay organized. I think organization is I feel like, families that do support neurodivergent children often do become coordinators of schools. They become the therapist, they become the assessor and the specialist and the support services all at once, and it can be incredibly overwhelming. So I think my professional background really helped me develop some problem solving skills and persistence in that. But it also helped me simplify information and communicate it in a practical way for families. I think sometimes professionals can overcomplicate the way they try and explain something to a parent. And in that way, with us, as a parent that's already overwhelmed, them trying to process that information and try and get what they need out of it can be quite challenging. So that's really something I'm very passionate about now, helping parents feel really empowered instead of really intimidated when they're trying to understand the neurodevelopment and support for their children, whether they're neurodivergent or whether they're neurotypical. So, yeah.
I love me a biomedical doctor, but I can tell you right now, first, when we went to our first appointment, Sal, I walked out of there and I was like, my brain was oozing out of my ears, I'm sure of it, because I was like, there was so much information to take in. And I was like, I don't understand what's going on. What is happening? Like, there was so much and now I'm like, yep. It's just become so second nature to what's happened. But in the beginning, you're trying to learn a new language in like half an hour, and you've like got to get really fluent in it really quickly, and it takes a lot of time. And so there's so much to be said. And I do honestly believe that each one of us, whatever we've gone through in the past, is leading up to this particular moment, right? For me, I definitely know that being able to be in productions and being in theatre sports and being really confident speaking has led me to be able to be a podcaster, right? I'm the person that would be like, where is the microphone? Give me the microphone. Whereas people would be like, I will be in the casket and you can give the eulogy, right? I just love it. There's something so powerful about being able to convey what is just the magnitude of what we are going through as parents. And I think it's really important that parents recognize that nothing is ever lost, right? Even if you go through a therapy and you think that therapy didn't hit the mark, it did something. It moved the needle some way. You might not necessarily recognize it in that particular moment in time, but I can guarantee you that particular thing is teaching your child or you something about what's to come or what he needs or what she needs. So nothing is ever lost. So I don't want parents listening to this going, I'm just not getting it right. I'm always getting it wrong. I never know which therapy to move forward with. Every time I move forward, it feels like 10 steps backwards. Everything is you're doing the right things. It's just sometimes it takes a little bit longer. And that's frustrating sometimes. I know that for sure. But it's all working to the common good. And I think it's so important that parents hear that and not judge themselves for it. Because it can be messy.
Yeah. I think the first step, I say this to parents a lot, is to really simplify and focus on reducing the overall load instead of trying to fix everything at once. When parents find me at some point because someone else has referred them on, they're already in that mode of I got to do this, I got to do that, I got to do this, I got to do that, and that's where I sort of try and say, okay, we're going to pick one thing and we're going to focus on that one thing and we're going to review in 6 weeks' time, is that one thing working? If not, maybe that one thing isn't for them right now, and that's okay. One of the examples was a parent was doing so well, and then they got to a point where they thought they'd try homeopathy, for example. Um, and for them, homeopathy didn't work for them. And other families, it had worked. And they'd spent all this money and they spent all this time, and they got to the end of the 12-week mark, and they sort of said, Sal, I don't feel like we're going anywhere. And I said, well, you're allowed to stop it. It's okay. It's okay for you to say, okay, we've tried this for 13 weeks. It's not working. What can we do next? But if they had tried, one thing, and then they'd also started another thing 2 weeks later, and then started another thing another 2 weeks later, how on earth are they gonna know what's working or not? And I think quite often that's the conversation that I have to have with parents around that, is to keep it simple, um, and just pick that one thing and reassess. That's what we do in business. This is what I do in financial planning before, is to assess the viability of something. If an investment didn't work very well for 3 to 4 years, we had to reassess whether that investment was working well, and maybe we might have to pivot a little bit. So I think parents feel like they have to do it all at once, and I have found that the ones that are most successful are the ones that are doing one thing at a time. Yes, it's slow. Yes, it's boring. Yes, it does mean that you are putting all your eggs in one basket for that one thing. But I also do find that those parents are more relaxed because they're just focusing on that one thing, and they've got a little bit more time to just to take away the noise that's around them. And yeah, I think that's really, really important, just simplifying things. Yeah.
And giving themselves the grace to say it's okay to just do one thing. I'm allowed to do just one thing, as opposed to I've got to fix this child, so we're going to throw everything at it and see what sticks. But as to your point, how are you going to know what sticks? Like, you're not going to know where it's coming from. It's impossible. I know that because I have tried. I have been the person.
Haven't we all?
That's how we all start, right? We all threw it all at once, thinking we were going to like solve some massive mystery, but it just leads to overwhelm for the parent. Because, and then the child just turns around and says, "I've got therapy burnout. I don't want to do this anymore as well. I'm going
Mhm.
home, leave me alone." And so that's why, another reason why it's important to just go slow and steady, because you want to see what works, but also you want to make sure that the child is being supported in a way that makes sense to them.
Yeah.
But going, as we were talking about the first steps, what are some of the first steps that you would tell parents who are going through some challenges at school? Like, how would that be? What would be the first thing that you would say to them is the first thing they should be doing?
Funnily enough, I actually think that most overwhelmed families are dealing with nervous system overload, not just for the child, but for the whole household. So I always tell them to the first step, as we said, is to simplify and focus on the reducing that overall load instead of trying to fix everything at once. So that's the first step. Um, just finding that balance, finding that, and I don't call it balance, I call it harmony, family harmony. So, yes, maybe it might look like one parent is working full time and the other parent's working part time, or maybe it work, and and then we're only doing one activity per week during, after school. Or maybe it might look like, yes, we've decided to do 2 or 3 activities during the week, but that might mean that we might need to take some of the other things that we're doing away, such as therapy. Maybe we might only do one therapy a week. So just finding that harmony to help reduce that overall nervous system overload for both the child and the parent. I always encourage the parents to come back down to the foundations first. Um, if they are feeling that overwhelm and they just feel like they're doing too much and they can feel that it's all going to come crashing down, I say, look, let's have 1 week break from absolutely everything. We're just go ghost and just focus on those foundations: sleep, food, movement, sunlight, connection. That's a really big one. We're on our phones all the time. Let's put the phone away for a week and just find that connection as a family. Breathing. I know some kids. I know my kid doesn't like to breathe. I don't like breathing, but some parents, find that breathing really helps for them and their family. Reducing that overstimulation and creating some calm wherever possible. I find that small, consistent changes are often the most powerful than the extreme approaches. And so I also remind parents that healing and regulation are usually a journey of stepping stones. So not overnight transformation, and that's where I got the stepping stones from. Is it really is a journey of stepping stones. So if there is a child who, for example, a parent said that their child was suspended from school, um, and you could very clearly see the whole family was overwhelmed. And she said, "What do I do next?" And I said, "You are going to eat, you are going to sleep, your child is going to be off school, and you're going to work on just going back to the basics." And she's quite um, taken back by that because she thought, "Oh, maybe I have to go and do this therapy. Maybe I have to put some headphones on. Maybe I have to do this." Um, so I think most importantly, also parents really need support too. And families do better when they feel connected, when they do feel heard, and they do feel understood. And sometimes hope starts with simply knowing that there are other people walking a similar path beside you. So um, we talk about technology. One of the good things about technology is that we do have Facebook groups now where parents who are going through similar challenges and things can find other parents. And it only takes that one parent that that sits with them and says, I hear you, I get you, I'm going through it too, I've been there, for that parent to start feeling like, oh, I, someone gets me, I feel safe now. And so just having that support really does help in those situations. That particular parent whose child was suspended, they were the principal said that the child could come back to school, and she actually, in the 3 days that they were suspended, she actually was the whole family was feeling so great that she decided that they were actually going to take 10 weeks off school. And they went to see the functional doctor, and the functional doctor put them on did a lot of tests in that time. And it's amazing what that transformation can be, because they didn't have to worry about the load of being at school. So they had the capacity, they had the spoons to be able to go and get a blood test, or, go and see that new therapy and talk about it and think about it. So in that 10 weeks, that child just completely changed. And when he was ready to go back to school, Mum didn't tell them about all the new things that they'd done and changed. They just went, the teachers actually called her and said, "Oh my goodness, your child is, what have you done? What medication is he on? What's he doing? This is so amazing." And and then when she started, adding extra protocols, and telling the school to support her with that, where before the school would be pushing back on that, they actually were like, yes, we will do it, because they could see those big changes. So yeah, it's about keeping it simple to start with, and then following those steps.
Don't worry about me. I'm just trying to keep my composure and not cry. It's all good. I hear stories like that and I think, oh, gets me in the heart. Like it just, because I see so many parents struggling and I see so many kids struggling and oh, it hurts so bad because you just want to help everybody and you just want them to know that we can change this. It doesn't have to be like this. And that school is not everything, right? That society's been told us that, if you're not in school full time, then you're a failure, which is just a load of absolute, you know what? I'm not going to curse on a podcast. And so I just think there are so many amazing humans out there that went to school part time and are now excelling, or didn't go to school at all and homeschooled and they are excelling, right? Because the burden of going to school is so heavy that it's impossible to learn. And not everyone is able to learn when you've got 26, 28 other kids all making noise, all trying to follow this protocol that you find really difficult. And I don't think that I have a real love-hate relationship with school, because if you're not in the right environment, it can absolutely be debilitating. And I don't think that that's right for our kids. So just wrapping it up, where can people find you? How do people connect with you?
Okay. I just on Facebook, very simple. I keep it easy and simple. You can follow us on our new page, our Totally Super Awesome Brain. I'm available on there, and I do respond to messages. Some people think, oh well, if I send a message, it's going to take her forever to respond. I'm usually pretty good, and so yeah, follow us on Facebook. And yeah, if you have any questions, some people just message me and tell me their whole life story. Some are just like, where do I start? And often I can help talk to them about, okay, what parts have they done, what haven't they done, and we can help them get some links to some resources. So yeah.
So grateful for you, Sal. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing what you have shared. It has been so important for parents to hear this. And I think you are changing lives. And I'm so grateful that you're on this planet. And I'm so grateful that you came on the podcast.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me on your podcast. It's been great, and I'm really glad to be on and to be able to share what things are out there that other parents may not know about.
Absolutely, Sal. Thank you again. And I'll talk to you soon. See
Thank
you
you.
later.
Bye.